So you've been scouring across the internet, looking at other people's custom case mods, thinking to yourself, my God, those look fabulous. I wish I knew how to do something like that. Well, my friend, look no further. Thank you for checking out the tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you what you need to know in order to make your own custom case mod. If you would like to be featured on my website, drumblanket.com, with whatever project it was that you finished with my tutorials, whether it was a controller, a console, anything you've done, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or Facebook. Send me whatever pictures you have, and I would be more than happy to include them in the slideshow on my website. Prepare to learn some stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Prepare to learn. Welcome to my tutorial. Feel free to navigate the tutorial at any time using the menu by clicking on my logo in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Whether it's the last step you left off on or the next step that you need to finish, the menu is always here available for you. If you are using a mobile device, I apologize, the menu is not available. However, if you look in the description of the video, you will find a menu for you there. How about that, guys? Trying to take care of everybody. Alright, I wanted to do the items needed section of the tutorial a little bit different than what I've done it in the past. I'm going to focus on telling you guys a little bit more detail about this stuff instead of running right through it real fast. First thing I'm going to focus on is this piece right here. This is actual metal. Oh god. This is metal and it's a car decoration. A link in the description will be provided so you can see exactly where I bought this and how much it cost. It's really cheap. I think it was like $3.99 or something like that. This is a vinyl decal of Batman, also purchased on eBay. A link in the description to Batman vinyl decals will be provided. You can find that there are all kinds of different ones. This one is like, I think 3.5 by 5.5 or so. And that's actually the biggest that I want to make a window in an Xbox One. You can't really make any windows any larger than this because you run into the issue of not having any way to secure your plexiglass underneath. Which brings me to what this is sitting on top of. This is white plexi that the decal has been applied to. And then I used clear plexi over the top of it to protect it. To secure the top piece of plexi, I have used this Cowles custom chrome trim. You can see it's 1/4 inch by 20 foot long, and I didn't use anywhere near 20 feet, clearly. But this is $14.99, and I have plenty left for other projects that I might do in the future. You'll also need some solder, a soldering gun, and a sponge, a wet sponge, so you can wipe the tip off of your soldering iron when you need to. And you'll need some SMD LED strips. You can find a link in the description for those as well. This is regular electrical wire that you can pick up at Radio Shack or Fry's. If you don't have Radio Shack, you can pick it up at your local electronics store. While you're there, you're going to want to pick up a Torx screwdriver set, and you're also going to want to make sure that it has Torx security screwdrivers. Okay, you're going to need I believe it's the T8 and the T10 to get inside of here, and the T10 I believe is the one that needs to be the security. But if you buy a set of it, you're going to have what you need available. But if you don't, honestly, buying a set is way cheaper than buying them individually. That's the truth. And again, you can use them on projects in the future that you might have. And whenever consoles change, the screws might change as well. So you will be ready for that. You're going to need a set of wire strippers here, and they're great for pulling the casing off the end of this wire, as well as the LED strips. Now the LED strip wire can be a little bit more flimsy, a little weaker, I suppose, than this. So when you're removing the casing from that, do be careful not to cut it any shorter than what you actually want it in your project. You're going to need to get some contact cement to apply this guy. You're also going to want to get yourself some scissors, a 5/16 drill bit, and along with that drill bit, you're clearly going to need a drill. Do I have to show you a drill? Fair enough. Here is a box cutter. We're going to use that when we go to cut out our design. Now, I didn't use this particular design on this Xbox. I originally thought about using these. I was going to use them back in here. Now, if you look at this, this has like a silver fade over it, and I did that to outline the edge of the oval here. And my original idea was to put these guys over I was going to paint like a light blue paint here, and then put those stickers over that, and then hit it with this silver, and I was going to have like this, you know, it was going to have like this design. But the thing was, lots of work, lots of cutting out itty bitty pieces and itty bitty stuff, and my goodness, no thank you. I ended up going with a larger scale version of the Batman Incorporated logo, which was actually the logo that I saw on this project when I was imagining it. This was just something that I ended up kind of last minute, too many details, and I ended up to omit that. But I did use this on the controller that matches this, which will be in another video. You're going to want to grab yourself some double-sided tape or some of this adhesive putty, and we're going to do that to mount the wireless card that usually sits back here. I mounted it to the top of the Blu-ray drive inside, and we're going to use a plexiglass cutter. Be not fooled, this thing is so sharp and detrimental to your little fingers. I cut myself right down the middle of my fingernail with one of these once. Actually, this one in particular, this very one. I forgive it, and I still use it. It was all me. Wear gloves when you're using this thing. 400 grit sandpaper. You really need to get yourself some sandpaper before applying any paint to this. If you want it to stick, you don't want it to chip off. You want this to look good forever. Forever and ever and always. Sandpaper helps you achieve that. You're going to want to pick yourself up a Dremel. Make sure that it is a corded Dremel. You don't want the cordless Dremel because it doesn't have enough torque to it. Get yourself a cutting disc and a sanding belt. These are also items that you can find wherever you find a Dremel, usually the hardware store, Lowe's, Menards, places like that. Another thing that you're going to want to pick up is a Dremel multi-purpose cutting tool. This makes cutting out your window or whatever design so much easier because it sits flat. It keeps your cutting tool flat, and you can see inside with the bigger window here. Actually, I prefer to have the bigger window on the outside and then look in through the smaller window. This allows more light to come in, and it keeps the cutting tool flat, so that way you have nice even cuts along your project. Very important that you have this tool. It makes it a whole lot easier, even cutting out something as simple as a rectangle. Using these two tools alone, that can prove to be kind of way more tedious than what we want this to be. We really want this to be a smooth project, a smooth experience, and we want to have fun with it. So this eliminates a lot of the stress. To apply whatever decal that we're going to use for this particular effect, you're going to need to get yourself some painter's tape. Actually going to show you how that works in this tutorial. I chose to use Duplicolor paint, and you can see that I have Krylon paint here. And the reason why I chose Krylon for the yellow is because where I was purchasing paint, this was the closest color yellow to what I was trying to do. And as you can see, I mean, it matches perfectly. That is Batman yellow. Goodness God, holy hell, my goodness. Actual color is sun yellow, is that right? Yeah, sun yellow, by Krylon. Rust tough, for whatever that's worth, I guess. I used gloss black acrylic enamel, and this is, let's see here, what's it called? It is called Gray Matte. So Gray Metallic by Perfect Match by Duplicolor. And I used a sandable primer, which I didn't end up sanding. Obviously, if you sand in the first place to get the primer on there, you really don't have to use sandable primer. You can use whatever primer you want, really. And then a clear coat to protect everything. And I'm going to show you everything that you need to know so that you don't get a funky reaction from this paint, because it's not like paint. So how about that, guys? That's everything that you need right there. And let's get started on this, huh? Let's do it. We're going to start by putting the console with the sync button facing us up on its end. And we're going to put a screwdriver, just a flathead screwdriver, in that grill. Lightly pull it up. It will pop out of place. And now we need to remove this small piece of plastic out from underneath the sync button. Just push on it with your thumbs forward. It will come out. Now, the top side of the console, you're going to have to push down on. And then the back side of the console, you have to push up on. In the area here where my hand is, I'm pushing down on the back side and up on the opposite side. And this will release a little, you'll hear a little pop, and you can start working down the back of your console with your screwdriver and popping the tabs that are holding the case together. This takes a little bit of time, so be patient with this. And don't get frustrated and yank on it or anything, because we don't want to crack and break our case first thing right off the bat. That would be very bad. So just take your time. It's a little frustrating because with consoles that have never been opened before, they kind of resist. Just keep working at it like I am. Obviously, you can see that I'm having a little bit of difficulty getting this thing open, even in fast time. Once we have it open, though, we're going to very delicately open it forward, all the way forward, and we're going to keep it very close to the body of the console. There's a ribbon cable right in this area here, and we're going to go ahead and flip it back over and pull up a little bit on the top side, so reveal this area here where the ribbon cable is connected to your ring of light board. There's a little piece of plastic that kind of secures it into place. You'll pull that up and then just remove the ribbon cable straight out. It's quite easy to remove. We're going to remove the connection to the speaker by pushing up right over here with our thumbs. Since we're over here, we might as well just go ahead and get this out of the way. You can also remove the wireless cable if you choose to do so at this point in time. You're going to have to pull it off eventually. Now there are screws on the top of this that are securing the whole body of the guts of the console to the case. This is where we're going to remove our screws at this time. This is our Torx screwdriver, the bigger of the two. And we're going to remove these screws, putting them off to the side in a safe place. I'm going to go ahead and unscrew all of these right here for you to see. You can see exactly how long it takes to do this and where those screws are located, just in case you're having some resistance, you might have missed a screw. You can check this part of the video for reference. Underneath of the wireless card there are another screw, maybe two screws here, I believe just one though. And this is your last screw that you're going to need to remove in order to be able to pull the top up off of this, the cover, the RF shielding. This also acts as a sort of an insulator for your wireless card. your wireless card grabs a hold of this RF shield to help get it a better wireless signal. So, something to think about. It's actually not entirely necessary, but it does work. And how about that for innovation on Microsoft's part? This right here is our last screw that actually connects this to the case of the console. But there are a few other screws that you're going to need to remove here that hold the cradle of the port for your wireless card. So go ahead and unscrew that while you're over here. Now we can pull the top off of this just to see what's inside of it and take a look at what it is you're going to have to remove eventually. You have your Blu-ray drive, your fan, and your hard drive. The fan will stay into place, but right now we're not going to take any more of this apart. We're actually going to go ahead and put the cover back over it and set it off to the side for later. To sand, we're going to use 400 grit sandpaper. You'll lay the sandpaper flat on your project and move it back and forth. Pretty easy. You're going to scuff it up until it becomes like a matte looking finish, and this will mean that you're ready. It really doesn't take very much time. As you can see, I'm having a little bit of difficulty holding on to the goddamn sandpaper. My God. But see, it really didn't take very long to do that. So we're going to speed things up here now, and I'm going to go ahead and sand the rest of this console. Have fun watching that. The cool thing about 400 grit sandpaper is that you can use this and it will not scuff up or put big scratches or round out sharp edges that are on your project. I used to use 220 grit sandpaper for my projects, and while it worked really well on the 360s, when it comes to like a PlayStation 4 or even the Xbox One, I find that there are way more sharp edges and you are more apt to round those off when using a thicker grit sandpaper. So stick to 400 grit sandpaper and you will be fine. So now we're getting into the fun stuff. We're going to cut a rectangular shape inside of here to where I could put a decal, which you guys saw at the beginning of this video. I want to put a picture of Batman in here and light it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by putting the decal down flat on this and taking a look at exactly how much room I'm working with. You can cut off all of the white edges around it, so that way you kind of have a better idea of how much of the picture is actually going to be showing. Check the back of your project to make sure that you're not going to run out of room to secure your plexi onto. Once you have all that figured out, you can go ahead and measure in about, I would say about 1/2 inch. Well, no, a little bit more than that. I'm going to say about, actually an inch. You want to go about 1 inch in on every side. When you have about 1 inch, a little bit more than 1/2 inch, you are in the safe zone as to where you can put your window. I'm going to go ahead and use my square to make sure that I have solid straight lines to cut on later with my multi-purpose cutting tool. So once again on this side I'm going to do the same thing, putting in about 1 inch to a little bit more than 1/2 inch around the edges here. And this is going to give me a perfectly shaped window, a perfectly shaped rectangle that I can cut out later. Of course, since I'm doing this by hand, and you will be too, you can run into the problem of human error. So if you're worried about that, you might want to give yourself a little bit more room to work with. Once you have the window figured out, whatever design you're doing or whatever, if you're going to use transfer paper like I showed you in my other Xbox One tutorial, whatever it is that you're going to do, make sure that on the underside of your case, you remove all of these grooves here. Because once you get to cutting, if these are left on the bottom anywhere, it can grab a hold of your bit and pull it off of track and really screw things up. So make sure you take the time to remove all of this stuff on the back of the top of the console before you do any cutting. Also on the bottom side of the console, well, the bottom part of the case, this is the grating or the grill on the right side of the console. And what you're going to do is flip it over, and there are these pill-shaped pieces of plastic tabs that hold that grill into place. You'll use your sanding belt to grind those off and then push them out with a screwdriver, and this thing will pop off very easily. You can put it off to the side so you can paint it whatever color you want to paint it. If you need to, go ahead and re-outline your cut just to make sure that you can see it just fine. And then we're going to use our multi-purpose cutting tool to go ahead and dig into the top of the console. We're going to get started on doing this. This is the part where you have to be extremely patient. The best place to start a cut is not somewhere small in edges or someplace close. What you got to do is find an area where you know there's going to be nothing but empty space in that area, and you have enough room to drop your multi-purpose cutting tool into the case right there. Also, I like to use the bigger side of the multi-purpose cutting tool's window. There's a bigger window and a smaller window. The larger window allows more light to come in, and the smaller window really doesn't restrict your visibility at all, especially with all the added light that's coming in. This really helps me to see where I'm cutting to make sure that I am cutting exactly where I set those lines. If the plastic is in your way while you're cutting, you're going to have to start blowing out the plastic bits. You'll see me doing that from time to time if you haven't noticed already. Why do I keep blowing? I am blowing the plastic out of the way so I can see that line that I set down. So in this area of our cut, I was a little uncomfortable because I couldn't quite see where the edges were supposed to meet. So I just kind of cut it in a rounded shape just to avoid any kind of catastrophes. And then I sculpted away what I needed to sculpt away with that sanding belt. I love the Dremel. It's such a great tool. Such a great tool. To make smooth edges on the inside of my cut, I ended up using a file set. Just a couple of files. You can find these at the hardware store, and even just getting a set of files is really good because it depends on how, I use files to get into really sharp areas and to help sharpen up corners, as well as sand everything out in the cut so that way it looks as flush as it possibly can. You can do that with sandpaper, but you have to have a thicker grit sandpaper. If that's a little bit more up your alley, go ahead and do that. 220 grit sandpaper would work perfectly for that. Yes, 220 grit sandpaper. Again, like I said, it's a lot more coarse, so doing something like this would be no job for it at all. It makes it a lot easier. Your actions, they shout out loud. I love you so damn much sometimes I wanna cut my heart out. And if I'm only here to perpetuate entropy. Now it's time to bring our project to life. We're going to start by giving a light coat of primer. You really don't need a lot of primer. I say this in every video because I want to make sure that you don't look at primer as paint. Primer is specifically there to help whatever paint you use to stick to the project. Sharp edges and things like that are very difficult to keep paint on, especially spray paint. If you avoid using a primer, your paint will separate at the edges and you will see the black underneath, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look cool. It looks like you didn't know what you were doing and your project looks like crap. So use primer. As you can see, this is a black primer and I'm just lightly dusting over it very quickly, making sure that I have it everywhere and I'm not laying thick coats on. In the tutorial a little bit later, just a little bit later, I'm actually going to provide you with a lot more information on your technique of painting. So that way you know that you're getting exactly the right amount and you're not doing too much and you're not doing too little. You will follow the instructions for your first coat of paint as a reference to how much primer you need to put on. Just a light dusting. So let's talk about how you're going to paint, like the approach that you take when it comes to painting, the actual technique that we need to think about while we're doing this. So I'm using a piece of paper here, and this was explained best by a guy named Tony D, who does a lot of really cool spray painting techniques and stuff. Check him out on YouTube. He's definitely got a lot of really cool tips and tutorials that I haven't shared with you. But this is what we need to think about when we're painting, okay? So what you want to do is when you have a hold of your paint, the first thing that we need to do is clear out the nozzle, okay? So you'll set it off to the side and you'll, just like that, just to make sure that it's all going. And then what we're going to do is, if the project is here, we start spraying over here, okay? So it'll be on, and then you'll go across and let off, okay? And then back on, and then move across your project, okay? You don't want to start here in the middle and little bitties and doing it like this. You want to go on, psh, 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 you understand? And so I'll leave the audio up in the actual video so you can actually kind of hear how the paint goes. But what this does is, if your project is here, okay, it's like a crazy little eye. This is project. So you want to start spraying over here and work your way across. If you start in here or whatever, you'll start to get a crazy little face guy there. You'll get like build up on the areas over here, which I guess is called a barbell effect, and we don't want that. You want smooth layers of paint across the whole thing. So once again, when you're painting, it's on, across, off, on, across, off. Okay? Hope that helps. Another thing that you want to do is you want to get yourself a cup of some sort, or some way of a container, some sort of a container that you could put hot water in, and then you put your paint inside of it and you let the paint heat up. Okay? The reason why you do this is because it makes the paint easier and flow easier rather across your project. I recommend doing it. I haven't said that in the last tutorials, mostly just because a lot of people don't want to take the extra time and wait. But if you really want excellent results, especially when you're using duplicolor paint, I suggest putting it in warm water, and then what you'll do is you'll let it sit there for a little, like about 5 minutes or so. You take it out and you shake it up, and if the can kind of cools down, you need to put it back inside of here and let it heat up for, you know, another 5-10 minutes or whatever. Take it out and then you shake it out. Also, when you shake it off, make sure you do it away from your project, okay? You don't want to get water all over your project and then go in there and start spraying paint, because, I mean, obviously, if we have water in there, it's going to cause problems. So avoid that. And I hope that helps you out. I definitely try to include new information in these videos, so hopefully you learn something there about the paint and how to go about using it. Alright, so this is the first coat, and as I said, I was just going to leave the audio up so you can actually hear what the paint sounds like when it's going on the project. You can tell that it's quick bursts, but I'm also laying it on there, as I mentioned, that technique, all the way across your project. All the way across. That's it. That is our first coat of paint. For our second coat of paint, after allowing the paint to dry for about 15-20 minutes, we're going to start to hit it again. And again, you don't have to worry about getting paint all over everything. But you do want it to look just barely wet, which means it's not quite glossy. You will definitely see a difference between the second coat of paint and the third coat of paint. So this is our third and final coat of paint, and we're going to put this paint on heavy. But when I say heavy, I don't want you to think of it as heavy. Basically, like, what I mean is you want it to look wet. So when you're seeing this, you can see that the light is reflecting off of that really well. And I just moved on to the next step. The reason for this is because your third coat is your final serious coverage of paint. So make sure that it's on there good, but not thick. You just want it to look wet and glossy.
If you'll stay with me, I'll make it another year. So just reach your arms out just as far as you can.
So to create the stencil image of the Bat logo, I went to Google and looked up Batman logo PNG, and I found a black and white version of the Batman Incorporated logo that I ended up using on the project. The reason why I suggest using a black and white photo is because it takes less ink out of your printer. You'll use more black ink, but you know, you're going to end up using ink. You might as well just use a solid two-tone color. It also helps when you're cutting, so you don't, you know, it's just easier on the eyes, and every step that we take to make things easier is definitely something we're going to be thankful for when we actually go to do the project. Now I'm going to go ahead and import this into my editing system, which I'm using After Effects to do this. And you can use whatever you want. There's GIMP, there's GIMP. There are others out there that you can use. PicMonkey's one of them. Pretty cool places, and they're free. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the emblem as large as we can. This is a 1080p sequence, and I have it set to 1 frame, so whenever I render it out, it's just going to be an image. I'm going to add that to my render queue and go ahead and set it to a JPEG sequence, and then choose the destination and name, and scare the shit out of me with that sound. Holy God. That literally terrified me just now. We're going to print the image and set the picture to frame, make sure it's a full image, and then we're just going to go ahead and print that off. Now, clearly this isn't the same image here. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I was planning on using these, and then I ended up using what I did cut out on the controller, so it was not time wasted. I have laid down a thicker plastic bag, this is a symbol bag, but you should buy, most people aren't going to have that kind of, you can use a Ziploc bag, anything that's like a heavy plastic, not something that's easy to tear, and you're going to lay down your blue painter's tape over the top of it and make sure that it overlaps and that you can fit your image over the top of all of that tape, and then we're going to tape that down onto the plastic as well. Once we have that tape down and secure, we're going to begin to cut out whatever image that we chose to use for this. This will give you a really cool, very easy to use decal that you can put, and it's meant to be removed. Painter's tape is cool because it's meant to be removed from paint, so it has an easy release. And while it can get a little sticky on your plastic, make sure that when you do this, you do it all at once. Don't set your project down and then come back to it the next day. Make sure that you're going to do everything all at once. You're going to cut it all out right then and there. So here we are using the box knife that I mentioned before to get inside of this area, which I am going to end up painting. So that's why it's easy for me to just cut that open and then stick my scissors inside there and remove the bat first out of this emblem. The reason why I'm choosing to do it that way is because the tape is securing this image into place so that it's not going to move around while I'm cutting it and making my cut completely uneven. It would make all of this work that I've done completely worthless. So by cutting out the inside first, we are securing it to the blue painter's tape, and I can move it around, maneuver it whichever way I need to without risking losing my place and having to realign the bat so I can continue my cut, which is imperfect, and then I have this imperfect bat, and then I'm pissed off. Now that I have the bat part of this cut out, I'm going to go ahead and cut out the oval, starting again on the inside, and then once that's cut out, I'm going to move to the outside, and I'm going to have a perfect Batman Incorporated logo for my project. So now it's time to figure out where we're going to put this. I have let this dry for about 3.5 to 6 hours. 3.5 to 6 hours. This allows me to touch the paint. I'm not putting too much pressure on the paint because I don't want to leave fingerprints and stuff like that. And it's always good to make sure that you kind of just touch it a little bit so that it's not, you can assure yourself that it's not too tacky. Depending on your paint, you might have to wait 24 hours before you do this. It's important that you let your paint dry for at least 3 to 6 hours, so that way whenever you put the painter's tape on, you don't risk pulling up the paint that you just set down, your base coat. So to remove the decal easily off of the plastic, I'm going to stick an X-Acto knife in here and free me an edge of the plastic away from the painter's tape. As I said, it does get a little sticky when it's on something like plastic like this, which is why I made sure to mention that you use a thick plastic, because if you're using a different kind of plastic, you're never going to get it off. So we're just going to very carefully remove this plastic backing off of our decal. And be careful in small areas, in corners and things like that, so you don't tear what you just did. Take your time pulling this off. Those extra steps of being extra careful will pay off for you in the end. So now I'm kind of locating where I want this to sit. I knew I wanted it to kind of be half on the main project, like half on the top and kind of wrapping around to the side of it. That was just how I saw it when I imagined it. and it was really easy for me to locate an area. This is all up to you where you want to put yours. I'm just showing you how I went about it, just because, why not? This part, however, proved to be a little bit more of a pain in the ass than I would have liked, but through determination and extreme care, I was able to get this on there the way I wanted it to be.
Kept it in my pocket for 26 years.
As I mentioned before, it is important for you to heat up your paint first before applying it, especially when we're doing something like this effect. We're not going to use a whole lot of paint here, and I want to have enough coverage back here, but keep it black towards the front. So I'm going to set this off to the side, clear out the nozzle, and very lightly put one coat of this stuff down. I'm going to do this all at once. So just lightly dusting it on. And I'm actually back about 8 to 10 inches away from the project. This kind of helps it spread out. I don't know. For the fade effect, the further away you are at first, really helps that effect work. So now you can see that I'm way above it. I would say I'm about 1.5 feet away from this, and just lightly bursting coats down onto it as well, because this is a grading that we're painting onto, and I don't want this gray to kind of get in places that it shouldn't be. I really don't want any gray in where I want there to be black when this is pulled apart. I hope that makes sense to you. The way that I'm doing it from above like that and letting it dust down, it's basically applying the paint to it in such a way that that paint isn't going to get underneath into the grill. Now I'm using a very easily tearable plastic bag. After that has dried for about an hour, I'm going to go ahead and put this over the top of it and then cut out an area here where this logo is. And then I'm going to secure that plastic bag down with more painter's tape. And this is going to allow me to hit it with the yellow and not risk getting yellow all over the project. And I also don't have to cover the entire project with tape. That would take forever, and the less tape we use, the better. Really, we've already used a whole bunch of tape, and if we go putting tape all over this, again, I don't want to accidentally ruin something. So we're just doing it in the smallest places that we possibly can. We're just exposing wherever our decal is, and now securing the bag back into place very tightly around the outer edges of our decal. Since I've already got the effect down that I wanted to get from the gray. The gray was there mostly just to show off that black oval. If I hadn't used that gray paint, it would have made all of that work completely worthless, and I am not about that life. Now before I go to paint this, I'm going to look all over everywhere on here to make sure that there aren't any holes in the plastic bag or anything like that where paint can leak through. Once I have made sure that there's nothing that's going to risk getting paint places I don't want there to be, I'm going to start applying my yellow paint. Notice I am doing it in quick bursts and shaking my can. Again, I heat up my paint before applying it. The short, small bursts are there because I've already got 3 coats of paint. And the reason why I want to do it very, very lightly is because too much paint is not good. It doesn't look good. Lightly dusting it on there, just little bits at a time, letting it build up until I have the right hue that I like. I'm not putting it on there too thick. I kind of wanted it to be I don't know. It's just trying to avoid putting too much paint, but just enough paint that you can actually see what it is that we're looking at here. So, quick bursts. I'm pulsating that nozzle and doing it fast and making sure that everything is nice and even all the way around. So that way it's not like a little bit blacker in areas over here or whatever. It's a solid yellow coat. Now we can go ahead and start tearing away our painter's tape and this plastic bag. Super easy, really cool trick, right? Really, really cool. And all at once, we're going to remove everything about this while the yellow paint is still wet. So now we're moving on to the faceplate, and I'm taking the flat side of our blue painter's tape and lining it up with the top outermost flat side of the bezel of our Blu-ray drive. This takes a little extra care. We don't want to leave divots and holes and creases and things like that where paint can sneak its way into it and completely ruin the effect we're going for here. I just want to paint the bezel, so I'm making sure to only have the part that I want to paint exposed. Before you go to paint, again, like right before, like after you get all your painter's tape down and you're all like, okay, this is right, just before you go to paint, you want to take a look at it again and make sure that nothing has popped up or anything like that. You want to make sure that it is all solid, stuck straight down, that there are no leaks or anything like that. Now that we have our painter's tape secured into place, we're going to find something to lay this down flat with, so that way that our paint doesn't go dripping places we don't want it to be. And we're going to hit this very quickly with 3 coats of paint, and they're going to be very, very light coats of paint. They will build up over the course of the 3 coats, just like the rest of the project, and we're going to do it, like I said, very, very light coats. So that's our first coat right there. Bam, first coat, done. This is our second coat here, and I'm putting a little bit more on the second coat, just as we did with our console case. And I'm going to make sure to wrap around to the sync button. I'm not forgetting anything. And let that sit and dry for another 15 minutes until my third coat. This here is the third coat, and this is our final coat, and we're going to go ahead and make sure that it is fast. That was it. It was super fast, that third coat. I feel like I put more on the second coat than I did the third coat. But that's because I really didn't need a whole lot more coverage. I just needed to address a few places where it might have seemed a little thin and some black was popping through. But once we've got that completely painted, we're going to immediately remove our painter's tape. There is our new yellow bezel. Alright, as before, I'm going to leave the audio up so you can hear exactly what the spray sounds like out of my spray can while I'm putting the first coat on. We want this coat to be super fast, and we don't want to put too much on there, especially since we used Krylon for the yellow. If we do a quick burst like we did just there, that's it. That's all the more I'm putting on there. You help seal the paint down to where you don't get a funky reaction, where you don't get that crackle, where you don't get like those ripples and stuff that you run into the risk of having when you use different paints with each other. So our first coat, again, super fast and very, very sparing. Alright, second coat is going to go on again, a medium heavy, and it's just going to look just barely wet. It is not glossy, but you can tell that there is a clear coat there. You can tell that there's some sort of paint being applied to this. And again, before applying this, you want to heat up your clear coat just like you did the paint. Alright, our third and final coat of clear coat. We're going to put this on heavy. Again, when I say heavy, don't think of it in terms of heavy because you will put too much on there. You want it to just be glossy. You want to be able to see the light reflect out of your project. That doesn't mean put a crystal clear image of the light above you. You don't want it like a mirrored finish. It will be super glossy in the end, but there's no reason to make it look that way now. You just want it to reflect the light. You can see I'm taking a little longer on my strokes and paying more time to the actual sides that I'm hitting here. So you can see that I'm doing it on every side and I'm working my way across the whole project. And I'm doing it kind of quickly, but I'm also giving just a little bit more spray time to the project. Now you can kind of see that there's a gloss happening there, and you can see my reflection in the black parts. And that's what you're after. I just set it off to the side and move on to the next piece. You will really start to see the colors of your project really shine through here. Not only will clear coat protect your project, but it really, really brings out the detail in that paint. And especially on a fade like this, it really starts to show you, like in the thinner parts where you didn't see the paint kind of fading. When you put that clear coat on there, it really, really, really kind of highlights those things. So I love clear coat. Now that we have allowed our project to dry for 24 hours, we're going to finish our case today. Are you excited? I am excited. We are in the final steps of our project. I'm putting felt pads on the bottom side of the case just to get a little added protection. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. And I'm going to get my plexi ready by basically I'm going to put the plexi face down. And it has, like, some plexi, most plexi, has this paper that goes over the top of it to keep it free from getting scratched and whatnot. And I'm going to line this up with my case, and then I'm going to trace the inside of my window. Now I have exactly the right amount that I need on the outside there, next to the factory edge. I have about 1/8 of an inch away from where the window is actually going to be seen through the cut, if that makes any sense, because this is going to go on the underside. We're going to hot glue this down under the case. And in order to do that, we need to have a lip around basically the part that you see, so that way it can be secured. I hope that makes sense to you. So you set your plexi down, you outline your window, and then 1/8 of an inch around the sides, each side, you're going to make your cut there. Using a box cutter to cut off the extra plexi that I'm going to set to the side for another project at another time. And again, lining up my square, and it's easier to do it on the outside of your square, and making sure that I have about 1/8 of an inch away from the outline that I made, creating another score here with our plexiglass cutter, putting it off to the side of the table at the edge, and lightly pushing down until it gives. We don't want it to break, and we want to make sure that we put enough time into this, because we don't want to not score it enough and then go to crack it off and accidentally completely break it. Once we have cut our plexi, we're going to kind of slide it into place and see that it lays flat against the window. If it does not, like mine didn't at first, we're going to look on the underside to see what it is that's keeping it from laying flat, and then we're going to remove those things. In this case, it was just extra plastic from the scores, from the grooves that I had you remove in the first place there, and this area here up close to where the faceplate snaps onto, there was just a couple of extra pieces of plastic that I needed to sand down. So I'm using a Dremel disc for that because it's smaller and I can get into those tight areas a lot better. I can't even get inside those tight areas with the sanding belt, so that's what your disc is for. Now it's laying flat perfectly, and we can go ahead and move on to the next step. So I'm going to remove the paper from the white plexiglass that we just cut out. And again, I'm just kind of making sure that my Batman logo is going to fit on there fine, that it sits within the outline. That's also a good reason to create your outline. Once I have made sure that that is going to fit there perfectly, I remove that paper, and then I'm going to apply my vinyl decal. Whoever provides you with your vinyl decal is going to give you instructions. They're all basically the same. You kind of want to just roll them on from one side, from like the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top, and then you want to push across it with, I used the white piece of plexiglass that I had scored off earlier, and you're pushing out air bubbles from underneath of the vinyl. Once we have that all into place, we can now remove the applicator paper, and here we are left with our kick-ass looking Batman window that we just made from scratch, guys. We made that from scratch. It looks awesome. Now we've got that guy into place. Look at that. Fantastic. Don't glue anything down just yet, because we're not done with the window. Now is our clear plexi. And I am lining this, as you can see, on the outermost edge, and that edge is actually sitting inside of the hole. Alright, I want it to sit inside of the hole. And then I'm outlining the other two areas where I need to make cuts. Make sure that your pencil lays down a good mark that you can see. And then once again, you're going to use your square and your your plexiglass cutter. Paper cutter won't do shit. You're going to use your plexiglass cutter, and you're going to cut. I have a 2 foot by 2 foot. You don't really need that. You can get a foot by a foot or whatever, and that'll work just fine. But you want to cut all the way across to the end, from one side all the way to the other, so that way when we break off our piece, we don't destroy the plexi. You want to make sure that it's going all the way across, because when you crack that down, if even just a little bit of it isn't been scored, you're going to break that plexi unevenly, and we don't want that, especially if we plan on doing more projects for other people. It also helps to make sure that the scored side of the plexi is facing you. You know, it breaks a lot easier that way. And now we're going to make sure that it fits. If you have a little resistance, that's actually good. Mine had a little bit extra room around the edges, which wasn't a big deal because I used that chrome trim that I showed you at the beginning of the video to secure it down. Now it's time to glue in our Batman picture. I'm using hot glue here and securing all four corners, making sure that it is laying down flat, 100% flush to our console, that there aren't any gaps in the edges or anything like that where light's going to show through. We don't want any of that. And then we're going to outline just the edges. You don't need a whole lot here. And make sure that you don't have any glue on the underside, like little strands and stuff, because the light will pick that up. Now, before I put down my clear plexi, I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. I'm gonna use some Windex to do that with. Just kind of rubbing it around in there, getting a little soapy, sudsy bubbles, and then I'm gonna dry it off with the same towel and make sure that it is nice and clean. No fingerprints, no smudges. Now we're going to install our clear plexi. Again, we're just going to make sure that it fits real quick, and if yours is a little tight, you're going to want to remove the film first. Also, I want to make sure that you are very well aware of this. Do not touch the plexi where you just removed the film. We do not want to put some fingerprints or smudges. We don't want any of that. We want to make sure that it is the factory clean piece of plexi going straight down. We don't even want to wipe it down with Windex because we risk putting streaks in there. Make sure that you do not touch your plexi. The top side of the plexi, however, is a different case. Top side of the plexi, you can touch it because we can wipe that down. And if there are streaks, it's not really a big deal because you can buff them out. Whereas if it's on the underside of your plexi, it's going to be there forever. We're now putting the trim down, and I need to cut my trim. I need to cut the trim angles at 45 degrees. I will provide you with an angler or whatever. It's basically like a half circle, and it shows you what, 90-degree angle, 45-degree angle. 45-degree angle is what you're after, and I'm doing it by freehand, as you can see, because I trust myself. I've done this for long enough that I just kind of, I know what they look like. But if you don't trust yourself, then I highly suggest you use the angler that I provide for you. Now, I'm making sure that this is sticking to both the plexi as well as the case. This is imperative. We want to make sure that it is touching both the plexi and the case, so that way the plexi is secured. There you have it. That part of the case is finished. It's time to move on to the faceplate. Now I'm going to use my contact cement here to apply this Batman logo to the faceplate. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the contact cement down first, and then I'm going to set it down on top of the faceplate right where I want it to be, and then I'm going to remove it again so that way I can see where the glue is. The reason why you have to do this is because this is how contact cement works. You have to put contact cement on the item that you're gluing down, and then contact cement onto the surface that you're gluing the item to. So take extra care here. Don't put too much because it does spread. You don't want it to go around the edges. You let that set for 5 minutes, and then you set down your emblem. Want to know something really cool about this? When you touch the Batman emblem on the right wing, the console turns on. You don't even have to touch the faceplate. You can just touch the Batman emblem and it turns on. Alright, so now it's time to install our LEDs. We're going to take the guts of our console and we're going to flip it over. And then we're going to remove the remaining screws that we see on the bottom side of the case. Make sure to remove all of them. There is a screw over here on this side you need to remove. Now we're going to remove the ring of light. There are 3 screws securing that into place. So what we want to do is we need to remove our Blu-ray drive and we need to remove the hard drive. So unplug it from the motherboard and pull them out. Now we can actually grab a hold of these black posts that help secure the case into place, and we're going to grab a hold of the fan and kind of work up the motherboard. On the underside next to the power source is a little tab which also gives us a little bit of a difficult time getting the motherboard removed. Just push up on that tab and this will come right out. Now this is the area that we want to focus on. This is the power side of our console. Right here is the power port. It is identified with an M, or for older consoles, M1. Now you can see that there's an M and there's a 1, but the older consoles say M1. This area right here is the areas that we're going to secure our jump wire to. So go ahead and pre-solder those up. This side here, this white side, this is our ground. This is our ground cable. The black side is our power cable. Now when you go to put in your LEDs are identified with a black wire as being the ground and the red wire as being power. So if you want to switch these 2 cables around, feel free to do that, so that way you can put black to black and white to red. Once that is secured, we're going to cover it with some black electrical tape just to make sure that nothing shorts out when we put this back together. A little bit further down where I intend to curve the wire, I'm going to secure it even further with more black electrical tape. So now I'm going to feed our electrical wire through the grating on the side of the motherboard, so that way I can attach LEDs to the top and outside of the chassis once it's all put back together. I'm just going to set it down in the case, make sure that it sits in there just fine. It's not going to hang anything up. It's not going to cause any problems when I go to put the top of the case back together. Now, this is our wireless receiver wire, and these are little forks that connect it to the top of the chassis, the piece that we removed in the beginning. And the way you take that off is you have to squeeze them together, making them face upwards like that, and then you can just pull them out from the case. It's quite easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of skill or anything. It's simple. You just remove it from the holes. Now this is our speaker, and you grab it from the top and just push it downward. It removes very easily. I mean, surprisingly easy. And we need a hole in the top of our chassis that's going to be big enough to feed that wire through, as well as our wireless receiver wire. So this is where our 5/16 drill bit comes into play. And on one of the holes that the wireless receiver was basically fed into, I'm going to use that as my pilot hole, and then I'm going to drill that hole straight down into it. We can now start putting some of our components back into place. And before we actually put everything back together, I'm going to go ahead and check my lights. And we're going to connect the black side of our LED strips to each other, and then the red side of our LED strips to each other. The black wire, the red wire, you connect them to each other. And then we're going to connect our red to our power source and our black to our ground source. Using a small amount of solder, I'm just going to secure those connections. Once those are secured, I'm going to cover them with either heat shrinking wrap or black electrical tape. Make sure that they are separate from each other. You don't want them to connect to each other at all. You want to wrap up your power separately from your ground and make sure that they just don't touch each other. Otherwise, they won't light up. Plug in your console. It is safe to do this at this point, and make sure that your lights light up. If they don't, luckily you haven't put any screws back into place or anything. You can get back under there and make sure that nothing came disconnected. If they did light up, then it is time to start putting this case back together. I'm starting by securing the ring of light board back into place with the 3 screws that I removed, and I made sure to reattach the cables to the Blu-ray drive, connecting it back to the motherboard. Next goes our hard drive, again connecting those cables to the motherboard where we removed them. I'm going to secure the wireless card to the top of the Blu-ray drive, and in order to get the cable that connects the card to the motherboard, I have to free it from this cradle by pulling away from the edges. There are 2 plastic tabs that kind of hold that in place and feed it through the top. This is the top part. This is the part that connects to the motherboard. So the top part has a wider edge around it. You'll understand what I'm talking about when you look at it in person. It'll make a little bit more sense. Now I chose to use some blue adhesive putty. This is very awesome for making sure that stuff is secure. People use it to secure stuff to their walls, so it's not going to cause any damage to your wireless card. It's not going to cause any damage to anything in there. And I'm just going to secure it to the bottom of the wireless card, and then I'm going to put it back here on top of the Blu-ray drive, making sure that the wireless card is already connected to the motherboard when I do that, just so I know there's enough slack that I'm not causing any kind of pressure on anything. Nothing's going to break later. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put our case, the top of the case back into place, and I'm going to put this speaker wire through the hole first. Now because a speaker is a magnet, I can actually just stick this to the side or the top of the RF shield, and it's going to stay into place, and it's not going to cause any damage to anything at all. There's actually enough room in there for that to sit up there quite nicely. Now I'm feeding the wireless card through and over to the top and making sure that everything is just fitting nice, nothing's resisting. The reason why I removed the wireless card from the top was because the window sits over that, and when I had the wireless card there, and I turned the lights on, you could see the wireless card, and I don't want to do that. I don't want that, but I still want it to have wireless. So I just secured it to the inside there. Causes no interruptions, no interference or anything like that. It works just as well as it did, as if I never even took the thing apart. To secure this wire down, I'm going to use black electrical tape, just a small little cut of it, and this makes sure that the wire isn't loose inside there, rubbing up against anything. It's not going to manage its way over into our picture or anything like that. It's secure. It's in one solid place. It's never, ever going to get away. Now the wireless cable reattaches at the top of the ring of light in this area here. We can now start screwing our smaller screws back into place. They go to the bottom side of the chassis, securing the motherboard into place. Make sure that you put the black screws back into where the X clamps go. That is the area I'm working on presently. Once all those screws have been secured, we can flip this guy over and set it into the bottom side of the case. Now we can put our longer screws back into place and secure the chassis, the whole guts, the whole thing back into position where it was in the first place, as though we never took it apart.
Now, lonely murderer, and I've done it all for you.
So now that everything's screwed back together, one last time, we're going to plug in our console and make sure that the lights turn on. The console automatically turns on whenever you plug it in, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to secure these LED strips, even though they have a tape on there, a sticky side. I'm going to secure them down with some hot glue just to make sure that they don't pop off over time or anything like that. I set them flat, one in the back side here, and then you can see one, a smaller amount of lights there towards the front. Altogether, I used about 13 lights. Now we can put our top of our case back into place. This is really getting exciting because this thing's done. All it needs now is just to be completely put back together. While you're putting this together, if you notice some resistance from your LEDs or something like that, try and relocate them to someplace or even cut them shorter. I like to use the least amount of lights that I can get away with while still achieving the effect I need. You cannot put more. I would say the safe zone is about 8 lights to 16 lights. That's the most you want to put on there. And I even try to stay away from 16 lights. Like I said, I put about 13 lights in this thing. That was all the more that I wanted to put in there. So now it's time to reattach our ribbon cable to the ring of light. And just opposite of how we took it apart, you're gonna put the you're gonna plug it in first and then secure the hoop down around the port. Now the important thing to know when you're putting your case back together, when you're putting the faceplate back in, you have to hinge it from the bottom side first. So bottom piece goes down, and then you carefully push the front or the top of it into place. Make sure that when you're doing this that you are working, that it's not popping out on the ends or on the bottom, because if you put the top piece into place first and you don't get the bottom secured, you're going to have to completely open the case back up and try again, and that is really annoying. I had to do that about 2 or 3 times with this, and it was just because it's kind of hard to put it back into place. Not because of anything we did, it's just a pain in the ass to do. So be extra careful here and just take your time doing it.
Yeah.
still miss you, baby. I am fed up, and I'm tired of the same damn things all the goddamn time. And you know it, you can see it, you can feel it when I walk into a room.
Now we want to put the piece of plastic back underneath of the sync button, otherwise our sync button won't work and you'll be like, damn it. Luckily enough though, it's actually kind of easy to get to. Just in case you do forget, you only have this piece to remove to get to it, but just don't forget that piece. Just don't forget that piece anyway, you know? We don't want to have to, make extra work for ourselves. Now we're going to put the final grill back into place, and we need to use some hot glue to secure that. So I'm going to outline where all the little holes are from the tabs that we removed. I'm going to put some hot glue in there. I'm outlining where the grill sits into and making sure that there's enough glue. You can put too much glue down if you're not careful, and it will seep out from the sides. So just put a little bit of it in there and move quickly because the stuff cools down fast. Now we've got that back into place, and our Xbox One Batman custom case mod is completely finished. Go ahead and check out, see if you've got any extra glue laying around from the glue gun, as in like kind of laying in places it doesn't need to be, strands of glue. Remove all of that. Take a look at the work you just did, guys. Now just to make sure that you do know that it works, there you go. And as I mentioned before, you don't even have to push it on the side. You can just touch the actual emblem and the thing turns on. But I filmed that before I was even aware of that. Here's the custom controller that I also made to match this console. And that Batman emblem, where the home button is lit up. Isn't that so cool? I'm going to show you where you guys can get that stuff in the next video to follow this one. Yes, another Xbox One custom controller tutorial, do it yourself, by Drumblanket is on the way. I read your questions, I read your comments, I read all of them, every single one of them. If you've left me a comment, if you've left me a question, I have read it. And a lot of you are asking me to do another PlayStation 4 console, and I want you all to know that that is going to happen. Yes, a Decepticons PlayStation 4 for a good friend of mine, somebody who I really care about. He asked me if I would do this for him, if I would be interested in doing something like this for him, and it just so happens that my time kind of freed up a little bit. Thank you so much for checking out this tutorial. You didn't have to sit through an hour and 20 minutes, but you did. And God damn it, I love you for it. Thank you so much. It really, really means so much to me. I just... all of you people, it's so good to have people like you in my life. So good to have people like you to do these tutorials for. And if you learned something in this tutorial, give me a big thumbs up, because it helps me know that. If you enjoyed the tutorial, for God's sake, give me a thumbs up, because I need to know those things. I need to know that you want to see more of these. Newcomers, if you have not subscribed to me, be sure to click that subscribe button now, because once I get to 5,000 subscribers, I am giving away a customized PlayStation 4 controller that I customized myself. Even made a video out of it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.